1 minute.
Welcome, Carlos. This is Paulo Moura. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Paulo.
Yeah, I think so. Today, I think I just introduce you, Carlos Moreno, Miriam, Adriano will join us, and Laura Janca, that is also online. So Carlos Moreno is well known for the 15-minute city. I think he will explain to us. He has the honor to join us today here to explain a little bit the concept, and then we will discuss after that. Okay. So the floor is yours, Carlos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Hello, everybody. Greetings from France. It's a real pleasure for me to start my chrono and to start this presentation. I will share my screen. It is okay now for you? Okay. I will explain in 30 minutes the concept of this research academic work with my team at Sorbonne University, Paris Sorbonne Business School, based on a new approach for happy proximities in cities and territories. The nickname, well known, is 50-minute city. We have the same concept for the middle and low density, the 30-minute territory, but in reality, our approach is to develop these new urban and territorial transitions with a development of more services in a polycentric city, in a polycentric territory, for defining with proximities another quality of life. In fact, our first question is to define in what kind of city do we want to live in. This is the real question for having a different approach of the traditional urbanistic or architectural approach based on more infrastructures, in particular, for going further and faster. We wanted to propose in an urbanized world. This is the case in South America. A few days ago, I was in Argentina, 19% of urbanization. In South America, 82% people live in cities, and at the same time, in this 21st century, it is not only an urban world, but at the same time, an hyper-connected world. We have the possibility for exploring our cities, for developing a lot of technological services, for helping our urban life with technologies, but we have as well the possibility for living in cities and to be disconnected in spite of this massive ubiquity. The 50-minute city, the 30-minute territory, our approach based on this high quality of life for citizen dwellers in cities and territories is based on this new humanistic social circularity for developing more and more services and for using technologies for having a lot of different services. This is a very different approach of the traditional smart cities approach. I am mathematician and computer scientist, and during the first wave of the smart cities, of the smart technologies, we have developed a lot of technological solutions, in particular based on digital platforms, sensors, and actuators. And we are convinced that we could transform our cities with the smart cities technologies, but in reality, the challenges of in cities are very, very complex, and cities are a real expression of this complexity, in particular, with a lot of different interdependencies in the different subsystem that exists today. After this hard period of the COVID-19, after this planetary crisis, we have heard about the world after, the new normal. In reality, the question is not if we be able to have a new normal or not. The real question for each one of us who lives in cities is how could we develop a new convergence into my individual life, in my social life. In English, it is very easier to have this symmetric view of me and we, to transform my individual life, this me, in a social urban life with this we. The 50-minute city today has become very popular around the world, in all continents, in a lot of different cities, in a lot of different languages. We could find this motto, 15-minute city. But I said to different friends, colleagues around the world, this is not important, the 15 number. A lot of people ask me, how could we develop a 15? Because it is more complicated. I prefer 20, 30. No, the question is, how could we develop a high quality of life in a polycentric city, in a polycentric territory, based on a massive access to a lot of different services, with a massive reductions of CO2 emissions, and at the same time to develop a more livable cities. Of course, the 50-minute city is today a motto, but we wanted to develop with you during this keynote why this 50-minute city expression is a more important for going beyond the number. The international organization, UN Habitat, said with the scroll of honor that we have awarded, the 50-minute city has become a global initiative because this is the possibility to offer a new narrative, a new mobilization in sustainable urban development, in particular for contributing to accelerating the implementation of the new urban agenda in this period of the COVID-19 recovery. I think that is very important to understand this sentence. We have proposed with the 50-minute city a new urban and territorial narrative. This is the same narrative for the local governors, for the metropolitan governors, for the regional governors, for the economic stakeholders, for the citizens associations. Of course, the 50-minute city, the 30-minute territory, in the field of happy proximities, is the continuity of a very relevant intellectual past of lot of people. Of course, in the last century, Clarence Perry, until the recent contribution of the time geography of the Nordic researchers, the Brussels declarations in 19th, the complexity way by Edgar Morin, and of course at the heart of this way, James Jacobs with this concept of livability for considering cities as a living organism with a metabolism. We have based the concept of the 15-minute city, of the 30-minute territory, of the happy proximities, because we consider that with the modern urbanism, in particular after the Second War, in this massive industrialization, in this massive productivism, in this massive consumption, we have accepted the unacceptable. And we consider that there are four special factors. The first one, the long commute in cities, in particular for going from my home to my job. In general, more than 2 hours for a round trip, even more. And this is totally unacceptable in the uncomfortable conditions, even in the mass transportation, and worse with my individual car, with the diesel car and pollution. The second point, the misuse of building in cities. In the metropolitan areas, the average of users of a building is less than 40%. 60% or more, a building is just closed because the modern urbanism after the Second War, based on the Athens charts by Le Corbusier, consider this development of the single functions for buildings. And we have today this abnormal situation of the waste of thousands and thousands of square meters built in perfect condition, because we have just one use for each one of infrastructures. The first point is the consequence of the two first point, the loss of social interactions, the ghost neighborhood, the absence of social interactions, the absence of local economical activities, the absence of local employment, the absence of these capabilities for generating real human life in different neighborhoods. Of course, with the modern urbanism after the Second War, we have took a trajectory for building and living in unequal cities, segmented, fractured, zoned. Our research is oriented for proposing for building a new urban and territorial narrative in the convergence of three different points. For fighting against the long commute, to develop a new chrono-urbanism, a new rhythm of the city. For fighting against misused buildings, to develop a massive chronotopia. For implanting, for developing these multi-purpose functions. The golden rule, 1 square meters, multiple users, each one of new users, new possibles. The third one, for fighting against loss of social interactions, the topophilia. The topophilia for loving our places, for loving our streets, for loving our squares, for having a more positive attitude in each one of our neighborhood. The 15-minute city for the compact zone, the 30-minute territory for the middle and low density. If we wanted to put it in a nutshell, is a factor, this capability for proposing a new journey, for proposing a new path, for developing this massive mix of users within proximities, not for having a smart city with smart citizens, but for having happy citizens in a happy city, for living in a happy life. I consider that we no longer have a choice, because the planetary global threat with the climate emergency is today present in all cities. The first time when I invoked the 15-minute city was just after the COP21 in Paris, at the moment of the signature of the Paris Agreement in 2015. I proposed this concept in 2016. But at this period, this concept, in fact, is totally on the radar because a lot of people consider that it's in reality impossible to have more close activities, in particular for having a job close to home. In 2020, the global COVID-19 pandemic crisis has changed our urban lifestyle and our work style. Because during the pandemic, with the different constraints, measures, lockdown, curfew, and others, in fact, we should live in just small perimeters, and it was the opportunity for discovering our neighbor, our local commerce, our green areas, our neighbor. And recently, after February 2022, with the Russian attack in Ukraine, we have lived in a new crisis with the energy crisis and the inflation, and we have a new constraint for having more local resources for living, for reducing our CO2 footprint and to reduce our energy consumption. The 50-minute city, in fact, with the 30-minute territory, this revolution of proximities is the opportunity for having this new response. How could we have really sustainable cities and sustainable territories? Because this is not the case today. With these traffic jams, with mineral cities, with the unhuman malls, and at the same time, the air polluted scarcity of natural resources. Some people said to me, this is impossible to transform our cities because this is the reality for 8 decades. But in reality, this is a question of the political will, a vision, a political decision, a new roadmap, a new trajectory. This is a concrete reality. Valencia is one of the cities which has embraced the 50-minute city. And this is the reality today in Valencia. They have canceled this horrible highway for transforming into a very impressive urban park. This is a picture of Vienna, one of the cities in Europe which has embraced the 50-minute city. And we could observe in lot of streets this transformation. This is the city of Oslo, with the new infrastructures dedicated to soft mobilities for reducing our CO2 emissions. This is in Copenhagen. This is our friend Björk Ingels with the big studio, with the transformation of this generation power with these multi-uses, with the ski slope in the top power of this station. This is the railway station in Utrecht, transformed totally for hosting, in particular, bikeability. I am very proud of this photo because this is the photo of the Milan Piazza Loreto. Milan is the second city in the world after Paris for embracing the 50-minute city. The mayor Giuseppe Sala, in fact, was the leader of the recovery task force of the C40 cities, which decided to, in July 2020, adopted the 50-minute city for the totality of the members of the C40 cities, the global network of cities for fighting against climate change. This is a traditional roundabout for cars in a European city. This is today Piazza Loreto. transformed by the Reinventing Cities in 40 Cities international contest. And Piazza Loreto is today one of the different centralities. Before our 50-minute city, Janet Sadiq Khan proposed the transformation of the iconic Square Times for becoming one of the more livable squares in the world. This is a photo of Medellin, Colombia, where I have worked with my colleague, the mayor, etc. This is a real compact city transformed totally for the multi-purpose functions. The cable car for developing more connectivity. This is not a cable car of the traditional stations. Each one of a cable car station, in fact, this is a place for living, with the different uses: a school, sports, incubator, locations for women, for teenagers, etc. And of course, this is my city, Paris, with this impressive transformation, with the motor highway along the Seine River, transformed in the new urban park. This is a photo of the transformation of the Rivoli Street in Paris, and we could observe on the right this scanner of the brain of the teenager after 20 minutes work. This is a real difference as far as the health is concerned for all. In reality, this is totally possible to transform our cities if we have the political will for changing our mindset for defining the quality of life. And the first contribution of the 50-minute city is not the number of minutes. The first scientific contribution of the 50-minute city is another definition of the quality of life, of the mathematician methodology based on invariants, for proposing a new concept of the quality of life applied in the compact zone, the urban zone, and in the middle and low density zone called territories. In fact, the 50-minute city, the 30-minute territory, as an expression of the happy proximities, is the possibility for offering to citizens a lot of different services for improving the quality of life, regardless of the size and the density of the city, of the territories. This is the social circularity for a human-oriented urbanism. Of course, a lot of people have proposed this humanistic urban approach. Jan Gehl, the Danish urbanist, James Jacobs, but our contribution is based in to define the quality of life as a set of essential social needs for deploying in the different contexts, cultural, economical, and social, and regardless of the size or the density. Our starting point is this vision of James Jacobs when he considered that a livable city is a city when anytime, anywhere, we have the possibility for having a choice without take a car. The point of cities is a multiplicity of choice. This is the core of our contribution, because if we wanted to deploy this multiplicity of choice, we needed to transform our urban and territorial mindset, our urban and territorial framework, and we need to consider a different relationship between the urban space, the territorial space, and the time, but not the abstract time, but the useful time. Because one of the particularities of the modern urbanism is that we have lost the useful time. We don't have more useful time because we have impermanence in hectic life for going from a work, from a home to my office, etc. And with the revolution of proximities, with the hyper proximity, with this multi-services approach, with this polycentric urban shape, polycentric territory shape, we propose, in fact, not a magic wand for transforming our cities in a few weeks, in a few months, in a few years. We have proposed a new mindset for developing another roadmap for changing in this trajectory our urban and territorial lifestyle. We have proposed a complete methodology, a powerful tools for implementing between the concept of cities with lots of infrastructures and citizens and users of the different infrastructures, this idea of the livable neighborhood. If we consider that the neighborhood is anytime, anywhere present, for proposing to transform the citizen daily routines based on this high quality of life, the new isochron mapping for reaching our services, to have a powerful accessibility to equipments, and for developing more proximities in the people's daily lives. The proximities are not only the metric distances. Proximities are at the same time metric distances, cultural proximities, emotional proximities, field proximities. We have evoked a lot of different proximities and to offer in our territory a new capability for identifying our hidden resources in our proximity. In reality, we have lot of resources in proximities, material or immaterial, but totally invisible, because our citizen daily routine is based in particular, and consider that is totally normal to accept the long distances and the long commute for reaching the different services. The concept of the urban proximities, embraced by the powerful C40 cities as global network of cities for fighting against climate change, has become a flexible concept for each one of cities, has this possibility for tailoring in the cultural context for respond to the local needs. And today we have around the globe lot of different cities, the very big cities until the very small cities, including in rurality, which has embraced, each one of us, this idea. The C40 cities in Buenos Aires the last 2 weeks, in the summit of cities, consider that the rise of the 50-minute city, this is the most important point today in the urbanism for proposing this new trajectory for going of our concept, because we are researchers. We don't have politicians, ni candidates. We are only a team of researchers, but the politicians today want to go from the concept to the reality. The first one was Misa Hidalgo. The second one, Giuseppe Sala, and other, in Horacio Larreta in Buenos Aires, Claudia Lopez in Bogota, Claudio Rego in Chile, etc., etc. This is today a very relevant community. In lot of cities. I went to Busan in Korea, the second city, a smarter city. And Busan has decided to deploy this concept with the new 15-minute city urban planning department. In Zurich, the tradition in Switzerland is to convoke a referendum for adopting a new decision. And in December 2021, the Zurich citizen voters have voted for this 15-minute city referendum. 70% vote for approving. And we have a lot of cities around the world in this way. This is the feature of Piazza Loreto, but today the most important is not only Piazza Loreto, but the different centralities. In particular, this is the investment plan of the Mayor Sala, 260 million euros for developing these new multimodalities with the bike sharing, with bike capability, with pedestrian areas, with interconnection with the metro, for offering in the metropolitan, for the cities in the Milan metropolitan services with less than 50 minutes. Buenos Aires has decided to transform the urbanistic code for transforming shared center. And I'm very proud of this law in Mexico. This is the law of the 2.5 kilometers adopted by Infonavit Institute for social housing. And this law constrained the developers, the real estate, for offering the different services in perimeter less than 2.5 kilometers for having an authorization. In the authoritarian countries, this is the case in China, we have in Chengdu this customization with the 15-minute city community life circle. In a small city in Tunisia, in Africa, this is the international contest won by Urban Plan, a Switzerland urbanist company, for developing the program. And I'm very proud of these two last pictures. The rural city of Saint-Hilaire-de-Bretagne in the south of France, who has downloaded our methodology for implementing the 15-minute city in just 14 square kilometers for less than 5,000 inhabitants. And before yesterday, I went to Varsovia, and the mayor of this small rural village, Compact, one of the members of the Polish Academy of Science, has developed, and this small town, the 50-minute city. If we wanted just to give the path for the implementation, 4 points. Lot of different proximities, a massive social mixity, a functional mixity, a organic density, the gentle density, very different of promiscuity, and the use of technology or the ubiquity. This is the ontologic model of the 15-minute city. Our ontologic model is our scientific contributions. Our ontologic model is based on the definition of this social circularity. The social circularity is based on this model for defining the 6 essential urban and territorial functions for having an access within a short perimeter. I said 15 minutes in the compact zone and 30 minutes in the middle and low density. The model of the 6 essential urban and territorial functions is based on 6 functions to live in the good conditions, to work with a maximum of reduction of commute, to supply with local employment and local resources, to take care of our health and physical, our mental and physical health, to learn, to access to different expression of culture, and to enjoy in the public spaces, resilient, climate resilient, and to have water and air non-polluted. Our idea, in fact, is to propose in all city, in the compact zone, in all territories, in the middle and low density, and in the metropolitan continuity, this hybridization for offering anytime, anywhere, this social circularity of the maximum of the 6 functions present by the physical means or technological means. And we have been developing a matrix, the matrix of the high quality societal of life, based on 3 new indicators. The personal well-being with myself, my family. The sociability indicator, my sociability with my neighbor and my work colleagues. The first one, the indicator of my daily sustainability positive attitude with the planet and with the other people unknown, for having more otherness. The mayor of Paris has proposed this concept in 2019. The pandemic, in reality, has arrived in March of 2020, and the 340 cities embraced this concept in July 2020, 2 years ago. The World Health Organization adopted as well, because we have the very strategic consideration with the health attitude, health positive attitude with pedestrian and bikeability activities. The IPCC in April recent defined the 50-minute city not only as a positive way for reducing our CO2 emissions, but to improve our quality of life by the important cascade effect. And the UN Habitat, during the World Urban Forum for the World Cities Report, consider that this is one of the 6 important measures for be adopted for cities for transforming. We have created with UN Habitat 340 Cities UCLG Smart City Explorer Congress in June in Katowice, the Global Observatory of Proximities for federating practices of cities, researchers, launch new concrete initiatives, and to continue to work on indicators. We need to develop more and more lot of services anytime, anyway. The 50-minute city is at the same time more an ecological positive attitude for reducing the CO2 emissions by pedestrian and bikeable access to services. Proximity for reinventing the economic model in cities, for having more local employment. Solidarity for fighting against gentrification. It is not possible to allow the possibility for the private sector to have the leadership in 50-minute city, because in this case, we will generate a new gentrification for having different districts with a more high quality of life, with the high revenues, instead of in other districts we could have inequalities based on this separation. For that, we need to develop a new urban policy based on an ambitious plan for several years with the lead of the local governors, mayors, president of metropolises, and president of regions. This is absolutely necessary. If the private sector will take the leadership for developing 15 minutes neighborhood districts, boroughs, we will generate more and more gentrification and more inequities. For that, our space for developing more discussion and dialogue is with the mayor, with the local governors. And the fourth point, we need to develop more and more empowerment for having citizens totally involved and committed for developing this trajectory, this concept, with the new financial tools, with the participatory budget, with the different new financial tools. For example, in Paris, we consider that the local commerce is a common good. In this case, for fighting against gentrification, the city of Paris has created a subsidiary of the city of Paris, a commercial property for managing, for buying, for renting local locations with for installing local shops with the rent below the price of the speculative real estate market. This is very, very important. We need to guarantee the common good, and for that, the proximities, the 50-minute city, the 30-minute territory, we need to have a new urban policy defined by a new pact for proximities. The high quality social life is at the core of our vision. The economic model is based on the generation of new intersections. We have today the possibility for transforming a lot of different business models, retailers, real estate for corporate, real estate for working, sports activities, for developing multi-purpose areas. The the economical success of the 50-minute city in cities is based on this new capability for generating lot of intersections, economical, ecological, and social. For that, this is a new roadmap with this vision for here and now to reinvent this polycentric and multipurpose vicinity. If I wanted to do a vision for the future, we needed to switch our cities in this way, to transform into a polycentric city for having in all city lot of intersections, a lot of interactions, not only in the center of cities, for transforming our suburbs, for transforming our outskirts. The power of attraction of a metropolis today is at least 100 kilometers. Our challenge, our issue is to be able for transforming the social, economical, and ecological model in a radius of 100 kilometers around the historical center of the city. Of course, this is an ambition, this is a vision, this is a trajectory, but we need to start with the reality of the today. For that, with our team at Sorbonne University, we have developed a powerful digital platform for exploring our resources, for noting the amazing inequalities that existed today, the absence of the uses of the local resources, and to propose this new roadmap for going from the constrained mobility to chosen mobility. One of the challenges for each one of us, for stakeholders in cities today, is to transform the work style. But the work style today, after the COVID-19, with the consequences of the Ukrainian war, is totally feasible to transform it. The name in Italy is the lavoro prossimo, the close work, the near and decentralized work. And we have today the possibility for creating the new business model. The international workplace, for example, has been developing the new business model for the real estate for working based on this massive decentralization for offering intermediate hubs connected with digital technologies for reducing the long commuting in cities. Just for finishing, the new proximities is at the same time new mobilities, but in fact, at the end, this is the possibility for offering a really healthier city to have more happy and healthy citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Carlos. It's really a pleasure to hear you. If you allowed us to give the 10 minutes to ask some questions, if the audience, if you have some questions, the mediators here, so I just leave the space for you.
Well, let me start. Carlos, thank you so much for your presentations. It's quite exciting. But I have to tell you, apparently we are running a completely different direction here in Brazil. And then our challenges, as you know, are really big and big enough to make this transformation. We're still in the very old school model where poor people live in the outskirts of the city and the middle class is living in gate communities. I would like to hear what is the methodology that you developed? You mentioned during your presentation, and what are, would say, the big challenge? Is the policy, the new policies, the cultural behavior? We are talking really a changing of life. Please tell me more about your methodology and the big challenge ahead for countries like in the south part of the globe to implement the 50-minute cities.
Yes, of course, a very, very nice, great comment and question in a few minutes. Yes, I will go tomorrow in Colombia, the Global South, for working with the totality of mayors of the capital of the region in Colombia, because the president and the association of mayors have interested in understand our methodology and the possibility for customizing it in the context of the global south, in particular in Latin America, and in this case in Colombia, but this is very close to the context of the in Brazil. This methodology is based on 4 steps. The first one, to establish a real diagnostic of the presence or absence of the 6 essential urban functions in our city. 6 urban social functions: to live, to work, to supply, to care, to educate, and to enjoy. For that, we need to use a digital platform, open databases, expertise of different skills in cities, and we need to have this diagnostic in exploration of our city, of our territory, in our case, with a definition of 100 meters by 100 meters. We could identify 100 meters by 100 meters in a grid for covering the totality of my city, my territory, my department, my region, for establishing this diagnostic with a radar for identify the presence, the absence of each one of 6 essential functions. Clothes for living, for working, for supplying, for educating, for care, etc. And this is a powerful tool because even in Europe, even in France, I could say even in Paris, when you have deployed this methodology, you have a lot of mayors totally surprised by the absence of certain essential needs. For example, the medical services in Paris, inside in Paris, we have discovered the absence of certain generalist medical services, for example. And the 6 essential urban functions, this is an ontologic model. An ontologic model is based on the knowledge tree. And knowledge tree, we have the possibility in this case for defining what means to live, what means to work, etc., to define the different uses, the different services, and the different infrastructures that we need. When we have this capability for exploring, we have in reality built a complete knowledge tree with the present, absence, mutualization, interactions, or not of the different services. The second point is at the same time to establish different indicators, different ratios, because this is not the same thing to have, for example, a lot of services with a very low density. This is the case in the Regio district, because you have just a few people for a lot of services. This is not the same situations in the suburbs, in the skirts. We have a lot of population with just a reduced offer of services. And we need to establish different ratios for revenues, incomes, taxes, etc. And this exploration offers the possibility to define the hypothesis for transforming our territory, for rebalancing our territory. In the case, for example, of the city of Paris, even if the Baron Haussmann has built a Paris with a very strong welcomability, we have today, in 2022, the west of Paris is almost dedicated for business, and the east only for housing. We have a really vertical separation between the work and the house, in particular the social house. This situation, we could note, for example, the consumption of energy. This in the poor district, we have a lot of consumption of energy, because in the rich district, this is with the more higher quality for the materials, etc. But we have a lot of different indicators, and we have the possibility in this case for proposing a path for transforming. And in our methodology, we have the possibility for establishing different hypotheses. I could mix work with social housing. I could mix with local shops. We need more medical services. We need more educational services. We need more cultural services. And we have this hypothesis. And after, we could propose the new project for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and introducing the sustainability, CO2 emissions, demographic curve, etc. We have been developing this methodology in open source in our website in English and French. In the next 2 days, in the next 2 weeks, we will publish a new white paper based on this definition of the high quality of life with our indicators for giving more tools for the different communities, scientists of practitioners interested in.
Thank you so much, Carlos. I'll give the floor for someone to make a question. You have some more minutes, Carlos?
Yeah, just 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, that's great. Yes.
Hi, Carlos. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question. I think that Thomas' question was really good about how to implement that. And I see this idea of looking for this level of planning for planning where public services facilities are located. But in a city like São Paulo, that you have a lot of private services and you have a lot of private actors, how to create good incentives for private sector moving their facilities from the city center to the outskirts, and how in fact to create this polycentricity, because are we talking here about more regulation or deregulation? This is something that I always think about 15 minute city. Are we talking about a zoning that is more stringent and more regulated, or are we talking here about deregulating and allowing mixed use, and how much just by zoning changes we will really have some a more polycentric city?
Can I include a question just to the same answer? How avoid the urban sprawl and depression in environmental sensitive areas of cities like São Paulo, that we have all the entire territory already occupied? Bringing the services and equipments and infrastructure to all the territory.
Thank you both for these two very good questions, very good comments. Yes, the first question, yes. I was born in Colombia, but I live in France for 43 years. And when I discuss with a lot of friends in UK and the USA, we have a lot of discussions about this word, this expression, regulation. I am convinced that if we wanted to have a success with this concept of happy proximities, polycentric cities, polycentric territories, multi-service city, for developing this CO2, this massive CO2 reduction with an accessibility on foot or by bike, we need to propose a new legal urban policy by the local authorities, the local governments, mayors, presidents of metropolis. The question of the private sector, this is an essential question, of course. But the authority in a city is the mayor is the president of metropole or the president of region. And the regulation is totally necessary for constraining the private sector to respect the common good, I am an admirer and fan of Eleanor Strom, the first Nobel Prize, the economist Nobel Prize. Eleanor Strom was awarded with the Nobel Prize for her scientific contribution governing by the commons. I think that the 6 essential urban functions defined as the core of the common good for living in cities in the definition of Eleanor Strom. She said, the common good as the set of material or immaterial resources necessary for increasing the general interest, the well-being, and to escape to a speculative economy. This is the definition of the common. We have implemented in the way of the urban planning this notion of the urban common good. And we consider, for example, for the local commerce in Paris, that the local commerce as a common good. And for that, the city of Paris has decided to invest for creating a subsidiary company, a commercial property for managing the locations in all city for implanting local shops, local commerce, bakery, fishery, handcraft, recycle points, etc., as a business, but with a rent below the speculative real estate market. In this other case, this is not possible to install in all Paris because for the very expensive rent, the commerce is obliged to sell the parfums or other things. After that, we need to discuss with the private sector as local governance for regulating and at the same time for proposing new opportunities in cities for investing and for developing. This is the way that the city of Paris, when we launched 5 years ago, the Reinventing Cities project, the Reinventing Paris project. You could check that. Reinventing Paris, this is a new business model for taking unused locations, unused surfaces, and to transform into the new polycentric areas. In the Reinventing Paris, we have defined for the first international context 23 different points. For the second, I think 43. But today, this is the international new way. Reinventing Paris 1, Reinventing Paris 2, Reinventing Underground. After 3 cities, Reinventing the River Seine in 3 cities along the Seine River, Reinventing the Metropolis, and the C40 cities adopted Reinventing Cities. This is a concrete example with the website Reinventing Paris, Reinventing Cities, for transforming the private business model for integrating in this new vision. But my conviction is we need to regulate. In the case we have decided to refuse to adopt a regulation, the 50 million city could become a new tool by the private sector for amplifying the gentrification process. This is the case, for example, in UK, because I received in a lot of circumstances different photos of the new tower in Canary Wharf, the 50 million city Canary Wharf tower. But this is a fake. It is impossible to have the Canary Wharf of 50 million city tower because we have installed a machine for delivering food or another machine for installing a market in the Canary Wharf tower. We need to respect a model based on 6 essential urban functions to live, to work, to care, to educate, to supply, to enjoy. This is the real model. If for that, if we consider that each one of essential functions as part of the common good, we need to deploy the governance, a new policy governance, and to deal with the private sector for exploring this new business model. In the global south, just for finishing, for example, in Argentina, when I went to Santa Fe, for example, I went to the bidonville, to the slum in Argentina. And this visit was totally fascinating because I met the different associations of the women, young people, etc. And when I explained in a big room the concept, I explained in the public spaces in the square. I explained the 6 essential urban functions for having an access within a short perimeter, for having short. And a lot of people said to me that this is our need. We need a school. We need medical services. We need sports rooms. We need theaters. We need cinema because we don't have. And this is, in fact, one way in the global south, in the slums, for requesting for the excision, for having these services. With the private sector today, we have the possibility, with the evolution of the work model, the possibility for implanting in the outskirts the different new work styles, for exploring in the skirts this polycentricity. This is the case in Paris. We will have today a lot of banks, for example, in the outskirts, in the 1903, in the north of Paris. This is the poorest department. The first employer today is a bank, BNP Paribas, because they have the possibility for installing more digitalizing and decentralized workplaces. But at the same time, we need to build a mechanism for having this dialogue, discussion with the private sector, and to generate this regulation. Without regulation, in my opinion, this is impossible to implement this model. Or this is a model for more gentrification, and this is not my.
Thank you, Carlos.
This is not my idea.
Okay, it's quite clear. Carlos, thank you so much. Laura Janca.
Yeah, could I make, Carlos, I will take you just 2 minutes of your 15 minutes.
2 minutes, really 2 minutes, because I need to take a train for
a very last and quick question. You were saying that perhaps 15 minutes not really important. Could be 10, it could be 20. Nevertheless, I think the 15 minute gives us a very tangible notion, of how we experience the city. No, I mean, it's very, in 15 minutes, we know what we have experienced, and perhaps we can expect what we will experience. So it kind of transports us to a very tangible and concrete city. No, so the importance of the sidewalk, the importance of time again, and
yes, definitely.
And so it talks about multiple scales, I mean, and especially when, I mean, Tomás and Adriano's question, it's very relevant. How do we think in cities like Sao Paulo, Mexico City, or even like Buenos Aires, with this scale, and how important is data, in that sense? And perhaps that's one question, and the other is what can we as an academic institution or the third sector help influence both public sectors and the cultural change?
Totally, definitely. Well, definitely. One point, Aurora, in your comment, I said for being more relaxed, because they have measures. Carlos, I have a problem. It's impossible for me to define 15. I think that the average will be 23. This is relax. But Laura, this is the possibility for one point. In our model, with our digital platform, the 50-minute city is an tangible idea because you have the possibility for having a meeting, less than 50 minutes for a meeting, it's okay, I agree. After 50 minutes, we have started to disagree, okay? Andy Warhol, of course, popularized the 50 minutes. This is the 15-minute, the beauty of the 50-minute city. But the 15 minutes is not the same 50 minutes for all. This is not 50 minutes for pedestrian. This is not the 50 minutes for mechanical bike. This is not the 15 minutes for electrical bike. But this is not the same 15 minutes for pregnancy women with the elderly people, with the motion difficulties. We need to adapt. And in our methodology, when we have defined the different accessibilities in our digital platform, we have as well the 6 essential urban functions, the different users, services, infrastructure, the matching with the digital maps, 100 meters, 100 meters, the radar of the accessibility of each one of 6 essential functions, the ratio for incoming, etc. And we have the possibility for define the profile. We could define the profile with a teenager, the profile with a couple without children, with the senior with grandson or grandchildren, etc. And we could, this is fascinating because we could redefine the uses of the city, because in a district with the very important presence of elderly people, for example, this is the case in the south of France. In the south of France, this is the heliotropism. We have a lot of senior people. In this case, we have this accessibility for different services that is not the same services. With the elderly people, it is more difficult to propose by capability, because it's not necessarily the good point for them. In this case, we need to offer the B plan or the C plan for matching with other kinds of mobility, with the on-demand transport, for example, if we wanted to avoid the individual car. This is the fascinating side when you have decided to explore proximities in cities, because this is the real life based on the concrete presence or absence of services. And it's in this condition that we could observe the deep inequities in cities, because we have a lot of different profiles and the uses of the city is not the same. And with this methodology, I explained to a lot of friends in South America, because I have a lot of friends in South America, when in cities, the most important point is to obtain a social housing. And I said to my friends, this is my position on Monday, when I will deliver a discourse to the mayor of the Colombian capitals, to say, in reality, in South America, the problem is not to obtain a social housing, because to have a social housing inside the square meters is not equal to living in the city. In reality, we could live in a city when we have, of course, the square meters inside for having a house, but only if I have a lot of services in this 50-minute city proximity for being present in the city. The livability in the city is not equal to the presence of my housing, for the housing or for the social housing. And in South America, a lot of mayors decided to install social housing, but didn't propose the different services. And this is the process of ghettoizations, the suburbs and the poor conditions on the time. This methodology has these fascinating consequences for not only to observe the presence of the social housing, but the different balance. In reality, a livable city, in the sense of James Jacobs, is in a city when anytime and whenever we have the possibility for living with a choice. And the challenge for mayors is to propose in his city, in his territory, the possibility for each one of us to have a choice for living, for supplying, for reducing the commute, for accessing to medical services, for accessing to education and culture, and for enjoying the public spaces. And in this case, we have a new political program, totally different of the traditional program. I want to build more social housing. I want building more metro, more underground, more buses, because the question is not the infrastructures. The question is the services. And our approach is totally different. It's in the opposite. For a long time, the mayors in South America, in the global South, in reality have proposed more and more infrastructures. And we consider that we need to develop social infrastructure. This is the Danish term. This is the Nordic term, because a social infrastructure is a multifunctional infrastructures dedicated to satisfy the social needs. And our scientific contribution is to propose an ontologic model with the 6 essential functions, with the knowledge tree, with the definition of different uses in the verticality, the services, and to connect with the different infrastructures. And if we have the possibility to connect more than 3 infrastructures for more than 3 services, in this case, this infrastructure automatically will become a social infrastructure.
Carlos, thank you so much. We are really concerned about your train.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure having you with us this morning. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the invitation. I was very, very happy to be with you today in this nice time. Thank you so much. I need to go because I will lose my train. Bye-bye, dear friends.
Nice trip.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, gracias.
Since we are in innovation seminar, we start the trip the other way around. And now we are going to introduce your panelists here. I'll start.
E consultoria no setor da construção, e basicamente a minha área é de consultoria de sustentabilidade para projetos de escala urbana.
Tá ótimo, muito obrigado, Miriam. Laura, Janca, por favor. Tudo bem, Laura?
Tudo bem. Prazer saludar todo mundo aqui de Texas, onde estou agora. Eu sou arquiteta, urbanista também. Eu estudo desenho urbano, que acho que tem muito a ver com o que a gente tem discutido hoje, né? Caminhabilidade, o desenho dos bairros. E eu sou a coordenadora do núcleo de arquitetura no laboratório Arquifuturo de Cidades aqui no Insper.
Tá ótimo, obrigado, Laura. Adriano, vou pedir para você se apresentar de novo, porque tem gente nova que está assistindo online, então também, por favor.
Eu sou Adriano, sou professor aqui do Insper e trabalho no núcleo de mobilidade urbana dentro do laboratório Arquifuturo de Cidades, junto com o Sérgio Aveleda, que não pôde estar aqui hoje por um problema pessoal, então eu estou representando ele aqui.
Tá ótimo. Eu sou o Tomás Alvim, eu coordeno o laboratório Arquifuturo de Cidades aqui do Insper, né? E é um prazer estar aqui com vocês, né? O nosso laboratório, ele se insere aqui no Insper, que é uma escola de negócios, exatamente trazendo a cidade para dentro do Insper, pensando a cidade como um campo de atuação onde diversas áreas do conhecimento atuam integradas para refletir e formular sobre os complexos desafios urbanos, né? O que pressupõe necessariamente muita inovação, né? Como a gente sabe, nossas cidades hoje crescem mal, têm problemas de desenvolvimento de todas as matrizes de sustentabilidade econômica, sociais, enfim, e a gente tem aí um grande desafio. Então, é um prazer estar aqui. Quero agradecer aqui o convite do Rodrigo Amanteia, da Ana Paula Fraga e principalmente a presença de vocês aqui. Muito obrigado. Era meio-dia, é isso, né?